Hi everyone. In this video I want to give you an update on something I've been dealing with in my life, and you may as well too in your 60s, and that is getting my dad's home. I call it my dad. He's been passed away since 2021, but I call it my dad's home even though my mom is still living, but she has dementia. She's in a home, and dad was solely responsible for things, for the house, condition of the house, whatever, as things went on. So this video is just to kind of give you an update about my struggles that I've had over the last 4 years. You can see that in another video. I'm going to add that here so you can just go reference it, so I'm not going to repeat the same thing over and over. And but just some very basics is that I do live about 2.5 hour trip away, so it's a 5-hour trip to go down for a day and work on the house. Dad left his property and house in quite a bad state, and yesterday, this is an update, the house went up for sale, and just very recently, and shockingly, of course, a lot of bids came in at first, just with the sign sale, they call it, you know, the sign up by the side of the road. And but what happened was a lot of them came in like they were 50 grand less than the building was worth. And this was a building my dad and I built when I was like 20, I think it was, about that, and he was, of course, obviously older. And the two of us, we built it. We cut the wood. We cut down the wood even off his land, and had a friend of his who had a lumber mill it for us. And then we hauled that wood all about 5 hours across this province, and that was back in the early 80s, late 70s. And so it was quite a house that we built. We built it solid. We had quality material in it, and to come 50 grand, I was really quite disappointed. To come 50 grand too low. But what we did find out is that as soon as it got listed and the photos got posted, even though the outside after 4 years, you know, the paint was peeling, and I was feeling pretty depressed about it, and it was a ton of work. And in that 4 years time, I had several cases of different health issues. One was a combined 2 surgery thing, which you can see in another video. Won't bore you with that. But it took me out for almost a year of that 3 years. And then we had winter times that took out at least 3 months every year. And man, oh man, oh man, the work. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. This video is about an update to the situation. Well, what happened was, oh, and I'm filming here from the beautiful province, Nova Scotia, in the Annapolis Valley, next to a blossoming orchard, as you can see, apple orchard. And hopefully I can get through this without any sounds of any tractors or motors disturbing us. So it was a very emotional time, because the houses might include in this photo, might include photos in this video, sorry. It was an emotional time for me because the house is now empty. There's still some work to do on the property. Oh yeah, did I mention that someone came in within the 24 hours that it had gone, that had listed and went live, and they made a much better offer, and we accepted that offer. Now, if everything goes right and they don't demand too much from us, you know, like things to fix up, one of the things is the septic tank should be flushed or whatever, empty. For some reason I can't think of the word right now. But and because I'm thinking of the well. The well is supposed to be shocked, I guess, you know, to take away any, to make it, you know, drinkable and used for washing and that, the water. So hopefully don't come with too many demands, and we'll have this cleared up in about a month or so, the top of July 2025. And if not, it's back to square one, I guess. I myself would have lived there, but it's in a rural area, not much employment, and yeah, it's just not working with my family. It would put us again, you know, far away from our own kids and children that we had that are grown up. But I mean, it was very difficult even getting down, for us to get down and see mom and dad when they were living in the home, although we did get there several times. So this is an update. I went through and I did some yard cleanup. I had plastic out in the yard that covered up junk, and my wife calculated over the last 4 years and us making trips down there, and I did have my sons, they helped some too, especially my youngest son, who's in his 30s. He helped, and we were able to eventually get the house sellable. Okay, I'm going to try to avoid these mosquitoes. I had one video where I had a mosquito vampire stuck on my neck for the whole thing, and I'll probably get a dislike for that one. But so seeing the house and going through the house and thinking of my dad, of course, my very first reaction was initially that, man, he left me a lot of work. And I was, sad that when he died in 21. I was very sad, of course, but I was also this mixed emotion of, we had a small engine repair in the basement, and see the other video. So he left it quite a mess, and I'd go down and I would go down enthused to get work done, and then leaving, I would be very angry at him. And this would go on and on and on. But the house is finally empty now, and people are taking views of it, and the prospective buyer who has already put money down on it has seen it, and they're having an inspector come out in a couple of days. So, we've agreed to the septic tank being pumped. There's the word. And the well, of course, being shocked. Hopefully there won't be anything else that this person wants, because there are some issues. It does need work. It sat there for 4 years. The paint is peeling. My dad used, the only thing I guess would be the only shortcut we used is when we did the siding, we actually put clapboard on it and stained it. And then as I moved away, Dad thought it was a brilliant idea to paint over the stain. And it doesn't really work unless you're doing it really properly and you get the proper advice, because paint doesn't really stick to stain. And so it looked terrible. So I can understand when people went in and they saw the outside, they said, geez, this is a mess. But inside, it's a beautiful building. Just needs a little bit of cleanup and paint, and it has an open cathedral ceiling, I guess we call it. I'm not sure what the technical term is now, but we got the rough beams locally because they were just too big for us to cut off of his land. And this was back when we built it in the 80s. And we put them all up there. I remember painting them by hand, having staging inside, and just, painting them. And it has like a groove and tongue pine ceiling. We had plywood on top of the, we had to tack the pine down, the groove and tongue pine. We let it sit there for, several months, I think it was, so that it would dry, because it does dry. And then when it was dried, we, removed the nails that we had tacked it there with, and then we put the groove and tongue together and nailed it good down fast, so it wouldn't come apart. You don't be looking up at the ceiling and see, oh look, I can see the tongue starting to show in each little, the groove and tongue. If you're not familiar, it's just, think of a pine board that on one edge it's got kind of like a tongue, and on the other edge is kind of a groove, so they fit into each other, kind of like sort of like a Lego concept or something. So it's beautiful inside, and I didn't want to sell it too cheap. I mean, I would rather have lived in it myself. But it's really hard. I know it's hard for people that when they have a family home. My parents lived in it for around 40 years. And it is really hard to let go of a home, especially when you have one parent deceased and the other one she doesn't even remember it. My mom, her dementia doesn't even, she lived here 40 years. No recollection of the house. So sad, but we're the survivors, and and we have to deal. This is one of the things that we have to deal with when we are in our 60s and getting up in that age. You start to end up looking after your parents and taking care of things. Sometimes it's things they should have took care of themselves. A lot of legal things and getting rid of a lot of junk. I do have a video on that too. You don't want to leave that for your children. I know I didn't want to. But I will say that every trip down we've managed to, load up our SUV. It's got a hatchback, and we put the seats down and we just use it as a truck basically. And remove things from the property. Sometimes it's faster to do it that way. My wife showed me the banking statements, and over the last 4 years, just to have a local contractor come by and haul away all that garbage, we spent over $1,700, and it was several loads because he had so much stuff. So, and sometimes if it's a place that, a location that is so far away from you, you really can't do a yard sale because it's too far to manage and to set up and to organize. So sometimes I took a lot of stuff back home, and I've been just using Facebook Marketplace to get rid of it. And my wife and ours are planning on going to a local area here where they have on Sunday mornings, they have a big flea market, you know, and we think we can get, because our house, we can get rid of a lot of stuff, because our house where we live, we're just brimming with stuff, you know, and I've already sold a few things on Facebook. So anyways, there we are, we're in the house, and I take a tour. You know, there's that typical echo of emptiness, and I got to tell you, I can still hear, in a sense, you know, in my mind, I can hear the voices of my aunts and uncles coming for visits, and, you know, Christmas Day, and all their holidays, and they live kind of close down there. And so, yeah, you get used to that, and growing up, and your mind has it recorded, and you're sort of, well, it stays in there, you know. And I would, after every cleanup over the last 4 years that I could get down, you know, I'd close and lock up, put the security on and whatever, and I'd say, see you, Dad. Because what was different, and what I was trying to aim at here, is it wasn't just a family home. It was the end of a dream, you know. It was, my dad started out, and my mom, and they had a small mobile home that they had lived. I mean, we're talking almost camper size. And back then you could work a job, and I think, and you could make a difference. You know, you could save up the money, and if you had certain advantages, like he got the land itself for a very reasonable price back in the late 70s, and he had a reasonable job. You know, he was a crane operator and a mechanic, and worked at a shipyard. I mean, he'd done other things when he was younger, you know, truck driving and different things like that. But so there you are. I mean, I spent, well, I could say years. I don't mean many, many years, but years working side by side with him. And I was in the woods, and, you know, with him cutting down the lumber and loading it up on the tractor and driving the tractor on the country road to the local sawmill. And, you know, I did that. And so there's certain memories that come with that. And I know I'm just being kind of quiet here because I'm getting a little bit emotional thinking about it, I think. And so I would always say, see you later, Dad, you know, because we just worked together so long. And so this time I was down, and the house is empty, and it's like there's ghosts there. I mean, good ghosts, good memories. And so we packed up the car, and I was driving, and my mom, and you know, I hate to say this, because family is not your greatest support. Like extended family, usually they are not your greatest support. I don't know why that is. Competitions, jealous, even if they're people you love dearly, it's weird. But there were a couple of my mom's sisters who were very way back. I remember, you know, I can remember. They were like, you know, my dad's name was Norman, and they'd say, Norman, you can't do that. You can't build your own house, because I was kind of saying before that they started out in a small little trailer. They traded that in for another trailer, and then they moved to another part of the province and bought a bigger mobile home. That's what I mean by trailer. And that's basically where my brother and I were raised, is in that mobile home. And then they decided, just as we were, you know, getting to the end of our high school years, that they would build this house. And yeah, and it was mostly me and my dad, because my brother was just too young really to do too much, because he's younger than me. And yeah, they all said, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't afford to do that, you'll get halfway through and it won't get finished. And it turned out to be a beautiful home, and he did it. And my father, he had sometimes strange ways, very stubborn and headstrong about maybe things, and had certain views on things that, you know, kind of harmless, but sometimes he was hard to get along with. And sometimes I think him and Mom didn't have the best relationship, but he wanted to build her a home and build a nice one. So when I left, we were driving down the highway, and I was driving, and I just sort of, you know, you're previously had been sort of like touching. They even had an indoor, like we had this, like I said, open ceiling. It's what they kind of a salt box design is what they call, which kind of doesn't sound great, but it really is beautiful, because inside we had oak railings, and that we had put in ourselves. And that floor, you know, when I stand on the stairs and I look at that inside balcony, and I look at the beams and the floor is just as straight as you could get. And he made sure they were straight, and like you don't see any warping up and down in that inside balcony. And it's just beautiful. It's just gorgeous. So I'm very sad to see it go, and I'm sad to see the connection lost. And as we were driving away, I started to tell my wife, as I was driving back home yesterday, I started to tell her that, you know, he did it. He did it. They all said he couldn't do it, and he did it. He did it. And I broke down, you know. Not so much that I couldn't drive, but I think it was probably the first time in 4 years, even since his funeral, that my eyes really started to water. And yeah, you know, I'm proud of him for that. He stood up, he went after what he believed in, and he did it. Maybe that's a good takeaway, you know. If you're somebody out there and you've got everybody, all these voices saying, you can't do this, you can't do YouTube, you can't do whatever, you know, it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter. And yeah, you can do it. If you put your mind to it, you can do something. So that's my update. I don't want to keep you too long on this, but it was quite emotional. And perhaps it was, now that the workload is coming off and the house is actually pretty much sold, maybe I can take time and grieve a bit. Yeah, boy. Well, I hope you guys don't have to go through the same thing. And if you do, take heart, keep going, look to the future, keep the good memories of the past. And yeah, you guys have a good one. We'll see you in the next video.